My name is Abby, and when I was around 6 years old, my family lived in a house that I swear was haunted, even though I was the only one who ever experienced anything. One night, my older sister and I were upstairs cleaning the toy room. My mom and my 3 brothers had gone to Walmart, and my dad was asleep in my parents' room. At the top of the stairs, if you went down and turned left, it led straight into my parents' bedroom. If you turned right, it went to the rest of the house. While we were cleaning, I suddenly heard something. It sounded like a child crying. Not loud, not screaming, just quiet, soft crying coming from the stairs. I froze and looked at my sister and asked if she heard it too. She said no, but I knew I heard it. In my mind, I thought maybe my little brother had come home early with my mom, so I walked over to the stairs to check. As I started going down, the crying got clearer, and when I reached the middle of the staircase, I saw her. There was a little girl sitting there. She was completely gray, not pale, gray, like all the color had been drained out of her. She had her face buried in her hands, just sitting on the steps, quietly crying. I stopped right next to her. I didn't even breathe. For about 5 seconds, I just stood there, staring at her, and then something in me snapped. I ran. I sprinted straight into my dad's room, jumped into his bed, and hid under the blanket. I didn't come out until the rest of my family got home. No one believed me. Next day, I tried to prove it. I left a toy in the exact spot where I saw her sitting, and when I came back later, it was gone. No one had touched it, and I never saw that little girl again. But that wasn't the only thing. After that, I was too scared to sleep in my own room, so I would sleep in my parents' room. And almost every night, I would see these small glowing orbs floating around the room, like they were moving on their own. And every single night in that house, I had this same dream. I would be in complete darkness, surrounded by these tall white figures. They had long black hair covering their faces, so I couldn't see their eyes, and there were so many of them. They would pick me up and just carry me. I never knew where they were taking me. That was it. That was the dream every single night. Until we moved out when I was about 8 years old. And the moment we left that house, the dream stopped. I've never experienced anything like that again.
I just want to start this video off by saying I'm not a paranormal content creator, and I'm not somebody who easily gets scared by horror movies. I've seen a bunch. Some are a little creepier than others, but usually I'm not one that's getting jump scared in my movie chair, freaking out. Usually they really don't scare me, and I'm really good at separating reality from fiction. However, I went to the movies last night to see Passenger, and for some reason I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I was actually actively getting jump scared by everything, and it low-key freaked me out. And also, the symbol from the movie that was oh, not safe here or whatever it said. Tell me why I wake up this morning. I wake up this morning. I don't know if you can see it because the TikTok camera is weird, but this is on my fucking shoulder. No, I don't claim this negative energy. I was creeped out on the drive home, because I had to drive myself home enough because it's a movie about Passenger. There's no passenger in my car seat. What if something wants to be my passenger, Now I wake up with this. I really wish that, TikTok is not doing me justice right now. Obviously, it's just a dumb coincidence. Hello, I have nails. Maybe I just, scratched myself. But, hello? The same thing from the movie? And, that's a weird coincidence in itself because I've never scratched myself that. And then the night that I go see the movie, I wake up. Pack it up, we're moving.
So my granddad came back to visit us as a ghost one time. Sadly, this granddad passed away before I was born, but my sister and brother got to know him really well. Really great and kind and loving. Well, he used to always come to town when he was alive, and they would go to a Chinese restaurant in the town I grew up in. So they knew all the people that worked there and everything. Well, he passed away, and so after that, my mom would just get takeout from this Chinese restaurant, go and pick it up, leave. We didn't really interact with him as much as we had before. Maybe it was hard, I don't know. Years after my grandfather passed away, he was called Granddaddy Bob. Mom went in to pick up her Chinese takeout as usual. As she's picking it up, she sees the owner come out at that time, and they say, "Hey, we saw your dad in here the other day." And my mom is sitting there I don't think so. And they said, yeah, we did. And she was like, he passed away years ago or however long it had been. They were adamant. They said, no, it was him. He asked about you. He asked about and named my brother and sister's names. He asked about this, this, and this, and started naming all these things that he wouldn't have known about. Things that were going on or stuff like that. And they were we had this conversation with him. He shared all these things. My mom was literally dumbstruck. She was like, I don't even know what happened. So to this day, we believe that my grandpa came to the Chinese restaurant to check on everything and everyone, make sure things were going well. And apparently he's still tied to that place. It's funny how the places you like in life is maybe where you're going to end up. So be careful where you frequent.
These mountains are said to hold the gateway to the underworld, as well as be the hiding place of millions of dollars of gold. Welcome to my series, Haunted US, where we are covering all of the cryptids and paranormal cases of every state in the United States. We are currently focusing on Arizona, and in particular, the Superstition Mountains. And the Superstition Mountains are named that for a reason. They were the stronghold for the Apache and Pima people. Those indigenous tribes believed that the mountains held the gateway to the underworld. The Apache also honored this mountain as their ancestral home. Settlers started calling this the Superstition Mountains due to all the legends that surrounded it, including that the peaks on top resembled people because they were in the spirits that watch over the mountain. There have been many disappearances, people who have gone insane, paranormal encounters, and unexplained deaths that surround the Superstition Mountains. Most famous being the Lost Dutchman gold mines, which is a cache of gold to contain millions of dollars worth of it. It was discovered by Miguel Peralta in the 1840s. He and his men were attacked and unalived by a group of Apache people defending their territory. It is said that the Apache hid the mine and hid the gold that they had already been able to extract. A man named Jacob Waltz, who was a German immigrant, said that he found this mine. He also said that he hid some of the gold. And his partner were ambushed by Apache people, and his partner was allegedly unalived by the Apaches. He made a narrow escape. He ended up living 20 more years in bad condition, and when he passed away, he ended up making a map of where he hid the gold and gave it to a friend. That friend went looking for the gold with two of her brothers. After nearly losing their lives in the mountain, they came back and published this map for anybody who is crazy enough to try to find the gold. Many people have tried, and many of them have actually disappeared in doing so, including in 1931, Adolf Ruth, who was an amateur explorer, went missing, and 6 months later they found his skull with 2 bullet holes in it. In 1940, James Cravey was found headless, and in 2009, a man named Jesse went to look for the gold, and his body was found 3 years later, shoved into the crevice of the mountain. More recently, in 2010, 3 hikers went looking for the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. Unfortunately, their bodies were discovered years later. People are warned against going into these mountains at night. There are said to be unexplained lights, disembodied screams, shadows, and there are even said to be cannibals that live in the mountains. Would you be brave enough to go at night? Do you think you would be crazy enough to look for the lost gold? If you have had any experiences in these mountains, I would love to hear about them. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure to like, follow, share, and save for later. And comment below what state you would like me to do next.
Jennifer, I don't know if I would have been able to sleep after this happened to me. This story comes to me from an ER nurse, and child, she said this happened a few years ago when she was on vacation visiting one of her college friends. Nothing unusual. They were just out at a restaurant for dinner, and while they were sitting there, she notices that this little 3-year-old boy is just looking at her intensely, and he's smiling and waving. Of course, not in a creepy way, just smiling and waving like kids do. So naturally, she smiles back at him. And child, as soon as she does, the little boy jumps right out his seat and runs over to her. His parents couldn't even stop him. He went over and gave her the biggest hug. Now, everybody around is just kind of laughing like, "Oh, that's so cute. Kids are so random." Until the little boy looked up. And he says, "Thank you, Jennifer." So she kind of looks at him and says, "What did you say?" And his expression changed completely. He got serious, like a little too serious for a toddler. Then he grabs both of her cheeks. He says, "You tried really hard." Goosebumps instantly cover her whole body. The little boy kisses her on the forehead. "You tried so hard to save my life." Now, everyone that's in ear distance is looking confused, and the parents are apologizing because they thought maybe he overheard a conversation, but the little boy keeps looking at her, and he says, "You don't remember me." And his next words make her stomach drop. He says, "I was 25. I crashed my motorcycle." The second those words left his mouth, her chest got tight. Because 4 years earlier, she remembered her very first major trauma in the ER, and it was a 25-year-old man in a motorcycle accident. And despite everything they did, he still passed. The little boy looked at her and said, "When my heart stopped, you kept pushing on my chest." Tears filled her eyes as she remembered that night, as she had did compressions on him by herself. But then the little boy said something that absolutely shattered her. He said, "And remember, I grabbed your hands and I asked you to stop." Child, that had happened too. The patient briefly regained consciousness during the call and grabbed her wrist and begged her to stop the CPR before he began to code again. But she had never told anybody this story. She said she was in that restaurant shaking like booty meat, and that little boy just looked at her and smiled and said, "You know you're an angel, right?" The parents are standing there kind of mortified but speechless, and he casually just walks back over to the table, picks up his little menu, and begins coloring like nothing happened. Jennifer just sat there in complete silence afterwards, trying to process what just happened, because there was absolutely no way that little boy knew any of those details. So you tell me, do you think that little boy was a reincarnation of her patient, or do you think that was something otherworldly that recognized her before she recognized it? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and as always, have your best spooky day. Bye!
This one is so scary, right? So this girl was at university, and after she got done studying for the day, like, she came home late back to her uni accommodation. Now, she lived alone though, but when she got in, the TV was on. Now, in her head, she was like, I always turn my TV off. But at the start, she was just like, do you know what? I must have left it on. Now, as she's walking around her wee apartment and whatever, she then sees there's an empty glass on the counter. And she did all her dishes. So she was like, what is going on here, right? So then she gets scared and she leaves and she rings the police. Now, the police come. And when they get there, they don't see anything. Now, they're looking around and stuff. And mind you, the only really thing this girl has said was, I didn't know the TV was on and there was a glass. Like, that could have been her. Do you know what I mean? It could have been. So the police aren't really believing that, like, something's going on here. But they keep looking anyway. Then they see that, like, there's like a wee attic area. And they go, like, the hatch looks like it's just been recently opened. I don't know what exactly where it was sitting, but they checked it, right? So they go up and they check the attic area, and there was a mattress, empty food wrappers. So the whole time she'd been there, someone had been living in her attic the entire time. And they're obviously getting a bit comfy with it when they're leaving TVs on and leaving glasses out.
Today, May 23rd, 2026 is kind of a big day for me, honestly. 12 years ago today, I went on my first ever ghost hunt at the Parks Bentley house in Moreau, New York. It was kind of a perfect storm. I grew up watching the TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, My Celebrity Ghost Story, all those TV shows, pretty much everything you can imagine. I'm a huge history nerd, and I always thought it was super interesting, the paranormal, because I would have stuff happen in my house that I couldn't explain, and I always wanted to know what happens after, right? This officially means I've been ghost hunting for half of my life. I'm 24 years old. I went on my first ever ghost hunt when I was 12 years old, which is crazy to think about. But ghost hunting has always been kind of an escape for me. If I was having a bad time at school or at work or whatever, I would always have the ghost hunting trips to look forward to. Maybe it was somewhere local, like either Parks Bentley or Wilson Castle. Maybe it was a little trip out to Ohio to go to someplace like Madison Seminary, or down to Pennsylvania to Hillview Manor. It was always something I could look forward to. It was a fun way to get out of the house, to learn some history, to travel, to meet some new friends. And looking back, it's crazy how far this journey has taken us. I never imagined I would get into content creation. I tried it out in like high school, and after it didn't really get off the ground, I figured I tried, not for me, but it just had like a funny way. Life had a funny way of throwing us back into the content game. I don't know, it's just so crazy to look back on the last 12 years and just kind of reflect on all of the memories that I have from this hobby, from what started out as just a hobby that I would do once every other weekend or so. And now it's become something so much more that I could have never imagined in my life. But thank you guys for all of your support. Thank you for allowing us to go to all these different spots and make content for you guys. And I'm excited to see where the next year, let alone 12 years, brings us, because I don't know, it's unpredictable, and it's been a great time so far.
An entire street just vanished into thin air. I'm pretty sure I experienced a glitch in the matrix. This story comes in from one of our haunted besties. Let's dive in. One night, I took my dog out for a walk, which I do every single night, and I walk around the block. And I do this same exact route every time. So it's pretty safe to say I know it like the back of my hand. Same houses, same streets, same bushes, same annoying light that's motion detected that comes on every time I walk by this particular house. I mean, I know it. So during this walk, we're getting ready to turn to go on to the next street. And all of a sudden, I swear there's nothing. It's like a blank black void. No street is there. I'm standing there trying to comprehend, but my brain just doesn't understand what my eyes is seeing. So I grab my phone to go to turn the flashlight on because I'm thinking maybe there's a power outage and it's just extremely dark. I go to shine my phone at it and it's like it's hitting a black matted wall. There's nothing. It's flat. I pick up a rock and I throw it, y'all. And I never hear it fall. And so that just creeps me out even more. So I go to step backwards and I happen to step on this branch. And when I do, I look down. And in that split second, by the time I come back up, that street's there. Everything looks normal. So now I'm creeped out thinking I'm having some kind of medical emergency or something. Like, I don't understand what I'm seeing. So I'm finishing up that walk so we can get back home. I kid you not, I'm walking and I see this rock kind of wedged into the road. And I'm sitting there looking at it. Like, is this the rock I threw? How is the road kind of creeped around part of it? It's not fully immersed in it, but it is partly. I'm still like, I'm done. Something's wrong. I'm about to have a stroke. My blood pressure's too low or something is going on. So I'm headed home. I lay down. I go to sleep. I wake up the next day and I head out to that same street just to kind of put my mind at ease, not expecting to see anything in particular, just wanted to make sure the street's still there. Now I walk to the same spot that I saw that rock and the rock's not there anymore. It's not all the way immersed. It's not just laying on it. It's not halfway like I had saw it. It's just completely gone. And the craziest part is that whole little area looks like it has freshly been paved. Now, I know that little stretch of road hadn't been paved the night before. I know it's hard to believe, but I really feel like I experienced a glitch, and I feel like they don't like it when you realize you saw a glitch. Thank you so much for sending me this story. I have not received a glitch in the Matrix story to this extent before. That is creepy. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, you were perfectly fine the next day, so I don't think you had a medical emergency. I've never experienced this, so I don't really know much about glitches, but I've seen a lot of videos on them, and I know there are a lot of people out there who have experienced. What do y'all think? Drop it in the comments. Do you think there is a glitch in reality? Do you think we live in a simulation? Leave me all your thoughts because I'm totally invested into this. And if you like spooky, creepy, scary, unexplainable stuff, make sure to follow along. As always, stay strange, stay blessed, share this out.
I knew that there was paranormal and spirits because I'd had experiences as a kid, but I didn't believe there was angels. Yeah. Now I know there are.
You know there are now.
I know there are. Yeah. The things I've seen since I died, I'll tell you.
You're gonna have an interesting time convincing me, but I'll try to have an open mind here.
What's really cool is ever since it happened, I have a special way of understanding how to heal certain things. And it's not that I do it. I just help kind of unwrap something on somebody energetically and help them wrap it back the right way. And
that's interesting.
And they heal. Yeah. And it's ever since that happened. Like all sorts of things.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me about what happened to you. How old were you when this happened?
So I was 25 years old. It was in 2003. And I ended up aspirating. Yeah.
Aspirating means what?
I ended up suffocating on my own vomit after I passed out.
And what were you doing to make yourself vomit?
So I had taken a supplement, and this supplement was from overseas, Me and my buddy, we had both taken it, and both felt sick right away. What we didn't know is this supplement.
Hold on. What kind of supplement were you taking?
It was called Furanone Dihydro. It's illegal now, but it wasn't back then.
And this is for what purpose?
And it was for muscle recovery. So it was like a muscle recovery accelerator.
You're into
bodybuilding.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so we ordered this stuff from Thailand, and I had lived in Thailand previously, so I thought, oh, that's good enough. So we ordered some from Thailand. It was sold out all over the United States. This stuff came, it was all written in Thai script, which I didn't know how to read. I did not know how to read Thai script. So we get this bottle. We think, it smells just like the American stuff. Let's take our normal bottle cap. It's just a liquid supplement. We take our normal bottle cap, and right away, like chills and coldness start spreading over our chests, both of us, even into our legs. And I knew we were in trouble. We need to go eat. That's what I thought. We need to go eat. So, as an invincible 25-year-old, instead of going to the hospital, I went straight to a Dairy Queen to get some food. And it was the closest restaurant to where we were living. And so we went down to this Dairy Queen, and I barely stumbled in, made it into the bathroom, and locked the door. And my buddy, he collapsed on the first booth as soon as you walk in. Well, he started vomiting. The manager saw him and called 911, got him hauled away in an ambulance, and he ended up being just fine. But for me, nobody knew I was in that bathroom, and they found me about an hour after that.
Sometimes you think you know someone and you don't. A viewer sent me this story from the UK, and she said after this experience, she started questioning how well she really knew the people around her. She was doing home health care for an elderly woman that she had knew like her entire life. This wasn't some random patient. This was a family friend. Matilda was a sweet old woman. She was quiet. She was polite. She was the kind of woman that everybody in town would describe as harmless. And she had been caring for her for years, mostly just with housework. But after her health declined, she had to take a larger role. But being in the house after dark felt strange. It didn't feel haunted, just wrong. Now, during the daytime, everything felt normal. But at night, she would hear footsteps, slow, moving footsteps somewhere deeper in the house. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that no one else lived there. She tried to rationalize it like the pipes are old and settling, the house is creaking, but the footsteps sounded deliberate, heavy, slow, like someone pacing, and she noticed something else. She only heard them after sunset. Never during the day. Now, eventually, curiosity got the best of her. So one night she starts checking the house room by room and nothing. She goes outside and completely empty. But every time she stopped moving, she would hear it again. The footsteps somewhere from behind the walls. Now, naturally, she asked the elderly woman about it one day, and child, the woman's whole demeanor just changed. She got quiet. She wouldn't make eye contact. And then she finally whispered, "Some things are better left alone." And that answer disturbed her even more than the footsteps did. But as time passed, eventually the woman's health got worse. And a few months later, she passed away. Now, because this was a family friend, she helped clean out the home later on. And while they were shifting through all of the old things in the house, the furniture, the boxes, one of the relatives realized something strange. But a section of the wall near the back of the hallway sounded hollow. And at first, they thought that it was just an old storage space hidden during the renovations. But as they started pulling the wall apart, child, they found a room. Small, dark, no windows. And standing inside of that room was a man. And he was alive. Everyone started screaming because at first they thought they were looking at an unalive body. The man was so pale, thin, and then he woke up disoriented. And according to the authorities, it turned out to be the elderly woman's son, a child she reportedly hidden away from the world for years. The one that the neighbors thought had died decades ago. But instead, he had been living inside of those walls the entire time. And now suddenly those nighttime footsteps made all the sense in the world. So you tell me, What's scarier, a haunted house or realizing that the thing that has been making the noise in the dark was a human the whole time? Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have a story that you would like to share, you can send it to denise.jewelstories@gmail.com. And as always, have your best spooky day. Bye.
Do not go into the Appalachian Mountains until you memorize these rules, because these rules are what's going to keep you safe from whatever is lurking in those woods. Rule number 1. If you think you heard something, no you didn't. If you're sat on a cabin porch at night and you hear something and it sounds like a friend or a familiar voice and it's calling to you, get inside and do not acknowledge anything. If you acknowledge it, you're allowing it to come in. Rule number 3 is if you think you can hear something it's like a mile away, that's when you're in trouble, because the further away it is, the closer it is. So think about that. Rule number 3, if you think you saw something, no you didn't. You deny. Do not acknowledge anything. You want to just pretend, like if you think you see something in the trees, you go, oh, look at that, there's like a bug on the floor. Let's just go now, and then you leave. Do not acknowledge you've seen or heard anything. If you see an old staircase or anything that resembles anything like that shouldn't be there, do not walk up it. Do not even acknowledge it. Go past it, ignore it. Those who have climbed the staircase have got lost on the trails. If you want to learn more about the Appalachian Mountains, we've just released an episode on it, so if you do want to listen to that, then go take a listen to us on any major platform.
Let's read a scary story. This is the Creepy Cozy Corner, where creepy and cozy meet. Grab a blanket and a plushie and get cozy because we're about to read a creepy story. Just a disclaimer, this story is especially graphic, so if that's going to be too much, no worries, just skip this one. This story is titled, I Barely Escaped the Worst First Date of My Life. The problem is, the woman I met can now look like anyone. I downloaded the matching app because the silence in my apartment had become heavy. You reach a certain point in your 20s where the daily routines of commuting, working, and sleeping blur together into a seamless block of isolated time. I did not have a wide circle of friends to introduce me to anyone new, and the conventional methods of meeting people felt entirely foreign to me. I spent weeks swiping through endless profiles, reading carefully curated biographies, and sending out introductory messages that simply disappeared into the void. I was entirely ready to delete the application and accept my solitude when the notification chimed. Her profile was incredibly sparse. She only had uploaded 2 photographs, both poorly lit and slightly out of focus, showing a woman with dark hair pulling a weak smile. Her biography contained no jokes, no lists of hobbies, and no demands for a specific type of partner. It simply stated that she is a former surgeon and was looking for someone understanding, who did not judge, and willing to come over for a quiet evening. We exchanged a handful of messages. Her responses were incredibly brief, arriving at odd hours of the night. I tried to initiate normal conversations about movies or music, but she consistently steered the dialogue back to the concept of meeting in person. She claimed she suffered from severe social anxiety and could not handle the loud environments of coffee shops or bars. She provided an address situated on the far edges of the suburban sprawl and asked if I could drive out to see her on a Tuesday evening. I knew all the standard safety rules regarding meeting strangers online. I knew you were supposed to meet in a crowded public space during daylight hours, but the overwhelming weight of my own loneliness bypassed my rational survival instincts, so I agreed to go. The drive took nearly an hour, taking me far away from the illuminated street and deep into a neighborhood that felt forgotten by the rest of the city. The streetlights here were sparse and frequently burned out, casting long overlapping shadows across the cracked asphalt. The houses were spaced far apart, separated by thick, untended blots of wooded lots. I pulled up to the address she had provided. The property was severely neglected. The front lawn was overgrown with tall, dying weeds, and the gutters hung loosely from the edge of the sloping roof. A single dim yellow bulb illuminated the concrete slab of the front porch. I turned off the engine, sitting in the dark cab of my car for a long time, listening to the ticking of the cooling metal. A deep, primal sense of unease began to pull in my stomach, urging me to put the car in reverse and drive back to my apartment. I forced myself to ignore the feeling, stepping out into the cold night air and walking up to the door. I knocked 3 times. The heavy wood door opened almost immediately. suggesting she had been standing directly behind it, waiting for me. She looked significantly worse than her photos. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy, chaotic knot, and her skin possessed a pale, unhealthy pallor. Deep, bruised circles underscored her eyes, which darted nervously around the empty street behind me before locking onto my face. She wore an oversized, stained gray sweater and loose sweatpants. "You actually came," she spoke. Her voice was raspy, completely lacking the nervous, excited energy you would expect on a first date. "I said I would," I replied, attempting to offer a reassuring smile. "It is nice to finally meet you." She did not return the smile. She stepped backwards, pulling the door wider to allow me entry. As I stepped over the threshold, a wave of dense, artificial heated air washed over me. The interior of the house was suffocatingly warm. "I was just making tea," she said, quickly closing the heavy doors behind me and throwing the deadbolt lock with a loud clack. "You can come into the back room. The front of the house is too drafty." I followed her down a narrow, dimly lit hallway. The floorboards creaked heavily under my boots. The walls were entirely bare, lacking any framed photos, mirrors, or decorative elements. The house felt entirely unlived in. She stopped in front of a closed door at the end of the hallway, resting her hand on the brass knob. She turned her head to look at me. "You're in good shape," she noted softly. "You look healthy. That's very important." Before I could ask what she meant, she pushed the door open and stepped inside, gesturing for me to enter. I walked into the room. The space was massive, appearing to be an expanded living area that had been entirely cleared of furniture. Bright, blinding work lights were suspended from the ceiling, casting a harsh, shadowless glare across the entire space. The floor was covered in heavy, clear plastic sheeting, taped securely against the baseboards. I stopped walking. My brain simply refused to process the visual information entering my optic nerves. Nailed directly into the heavy wooden studs of the far wall were 3 men. They were stripped down to their undergarments, their arms spread wide, secured to the wall by massive, thick iron bolts driven brutally through the palms of their hands and joints of their shoulders. Their heads slumped forward against their chests, their breathing shallow, rattling, and wet. Thick, dark trails of dried blood stained the peeling wallpaper beneath their arms. But the horror of their crucifixion was entirely eclipsed by the state of their lower bodies. Their legs had been surgically amputated entirely at the mid-thigh. Thick, crude black sutures wrapped around the severed stumps, hastily binding the pale human flesh to limbs that completely defied biology. Grafted onto the raggedy ends of their human thighs were massive, decaying, animalistic legs. The grafted appendages were covered in thick, matted brown fur, ending in long hooked claws that scraped against the plastic sheeting on the floor. The unnatural tissue was actively rotting, weeping dark fluids and emitting the foul stench of decay. The human tissue surrounding the grafts was inflamed, swollen with a severe infection. I took a stumbling step backwards, a scream catching in the back of my throat, strangling me. I turned blindly to run back down the hallway, but she was already standing directly behind me. She held a sharp surgical scalpel in her right hand. The blade pointed steadily at my abdomen. "Do not make a sound," she ordered. Her voice was no longer raspy or nervous. If you scream, I will sever your femoral artery right here in the hallway, and you will bleed to death before you can reach the front door. Walk to the center of the room." I raised my hands instinctively, my entire body trembling violently as I backed away from the blade, moving deeper into the nightmare. "What are you doing to them?" I gasped, entirely unable to tear my eyes away from the crucified men and their rotting fur-covered limbs. "I'm trying to save them," she replied calmly, stepping fully into the room and locking the door behind her. She gestured with her free hand toward the dark, recessed corner of the room, an area situated entirely outside the harsh glare of the lamps. I turned my head. Chained securely to a massive iron radiator pipe was a creature that belonged entirely to the darkest depths of human mythology. It was a towering, emaciated monstrosity hunched over on the plastic sheeting. Its gray, stretched skin was pulled incredibly tight over its protruding ribs and elongated spine. The skull was elongated, resembling a starving, rotting deer, possessing sunken, glowing eyes and a jaw full of jagged, broken teeth. Thick patches of coarse brown fur clung sporadically to its shoulders and back. The creature was heavily mutilated. It was missing its left arm entirely, the joint ending in a ragged, rotting tear. Both of its lower legs had been brutally severed, replaced by flesh, bleeding stumps. The creature thrashed aggressively against the heavy iron chains, binding its neck to the radiator, snapping its jaw at the emptied air, completely feral and starved. "Sit on the stool," she commanded, pointing the scalpel toward a metal medical stool positioned near a rolling stainless steel tray. I obeyed, my legs entirely failing me, collapsing onto the hard metal surface. She walked over to a metal cabinet, keeping the scalpel leveled at me, and pulled out a set of folded blue surgical scrubs. She pulled the garments methodically over her sweatpants and sweater, slipping a pair of latex gloves over her hands. She grabbed a plastic clipboard resting on the rolling tray and tossed it onto my lap. "Look at the charts," she instructed. "You need to understand the process. You need to understand why you are here. You are the perfect candidate. You are much healthier than the others on the wall." I looked down at the clipboard with shaking hands. The pages were filled with meticulous, structured medical data. There were columns recording heart rates, blood pressure, detailed surgical incision angles, and massive dosages of immunosuppressant drugs. The notes detailed the exact hours of surgical amputation, the specific grafting procedures, and the inevitable rapid timelines of tissue necrosis and biological rejection. "You are attaching those animal legs to human beings," I whispered, the sheer insanity of the medical charts causing my vision to blur. "I am grafting his limbs onto human hosts," she corrected me, pointing the scalpel towards the thrashing, chained monstrosity in the corner. "I'm trying to find a compatible genetic and immunological match." The men on the wall failed. Their bodies rejected his tissue, so the necrosis spreads too fast. "I need someone strong enough to accept the graft without rotting." "Why?" I pleaded, tears of panic spilling down my face. "What is that thing?" She stopped sorting through the surgical instruments on the tray. She looked at the chained creature, her cold eyes softening into a look of profound, devastating sorrow. "He was my boyfriend," she said softly. We walked closer to the creature, remaining just outside the reach of its snapping jaws. "We went camping together last autumn," she began, her voice taking on a distant, haunting quality as she stared at the rotting monster. "We hiked deep into the state park, far off the marked trails. We wanted to be completely alone. The woods were supposed to be quiet, but they found us on the second night. We were sleeping in the tent. I heard the nylon fabric tear, and before I could even sit up, they dragged him screaming into the dark." She turned to look at me, her grip tightening on the scalpel. "There were two of them," she continued. "I grabbed his hunting knife and ran into the woods after them. I tracked the blood on the trail for miles. I tracked them all the way to the massive cave system hidden in the foothills, then crawled into the rocks and hid in the dark watching them." She took a slow, deep breath. "They were monsters in the wood, tearing through the trees on animal legs, but when they reached the safety of the cave, I watched their bones break, their skin fold and shift, and them actively shapeshift back into normal human forms. They used the human faces to walk into towns, to lure people out, and then they shift back to hunt." She pointed the scalpel directly at my chest. "I waited in the dark until they were completely human," she said, a dark vindictive pride bleeding into her tone. "I waited until they were vulnerable, and then I drove the hunting knife through their throats. I killed them both while they slept in the dirt." I stared at her, utterly paralyzed by the horrific confession. "I found him in the back of the cave," she whispered, looking back at the chained creature. "He was in terrible shape. They had already started feeding on him. They had torn chunks of flesh from his legs and his arm. I carried him out of the woods and brought him here to fix him. I patched his wounds, gave him antibiotics, did everything I could." She let out a ragged, desperate sob. "For the bites, whatever venom they carry in their teeth, it was already in his bloodstream." The infection took hold. I watched the man I loved stretch and break. I watched the fur grow out of his skin and remained beside him as his mind faded away until he became one of them. The creature on the chains roared, a terrifying, echoing sound that vibrated deeply in my chest. "But he is stuck," she explained frantically, pacing in front of the metal tray. "For some reason, he cannot turn back into the man I love. I think the physical injuries they inflicted on him damaged his biological ability to initiate the shift. The trauma locked him in this form." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a manic, unyielding obsession. "That is why I need the match," she declared. "If I can find a human host that successfully integrates with his rotting limbs, it proves that the tissue will stabilize. Once I find the perfect candidate, I will reverse the procedure. I will amputate your human legs, and I will surgically graft your healthy human tissue directly onto his body. I believe the influx of matched, healthy human biology will trigger the shape-shifting mechanism. It will give his body the blueprint to become human eventually. I just want my love back." The sheer monumental insanity of her plan crashed over me. She turned away from me, reaching down to the stainless steel tray. She set the scalpel down and picked up a massive medical syringe attached to a thick glass vial filled with a cloudy yellow liquid. The men on the wall were weak, she said, tapping the needle to clear the air bubbles. They were desperate, pathetic men who let me bring them here without asking any questions. But you look resilient. You look like you have the biology to survive the integration. Roll up your sleeve. This sedative is going to burn, but you need to be unconscious when I start the bone saw. She began to walk towards me, the needle gleaming under the harsh lights. The sheer terror threatening to shut my brain down completely morphed into a sudden explosive surge of adrenaline. I knew with absolute crystal clarity that if the needle pierced my skin, I would wake up nailed to the wooden studs, watching my own legs rot away. I did not speak. I refused to plead for my life. As she closed the distance, stepping within arm's reach, I threw my entire body weight to the side, rolling violently off the metal stool. She lunged forward, thrusting the syringe toward my neck, but the needle only caught the fabric of my shirt, tearing through the cotton as I hit the plastic-covered floor. I scrambled to my hands and knees, my boots slipping frantically on the slick plastic sheeting. I grabbed the heavy wooden frame and a discarded dining chair sitting near the edge of the room. She pivoted gracefully, dropping the empty syringe and snatching the sharp surgical scalpel off the rolling tray. She charged at me, bringing the blade down in a vicious, sweeping arc. Swung the heavy wooden chair upward, using the thick legs as a desperate shield. The sharp scalpel blade sank deep into the wood, burying itself in the frame and jerking her arm forward. Before she could pull the blade free, I stepped forward, gripping the back of the chair tightly, and drove the heavy wooden mass directly into her chest, with every ounce of physical strength I could possess. The impact lifted her entirely off her feet, flew backward, the breath rushing out of her lungs in a harsh gasp, and crashed violently onto the floor. She slid across the slick plastic sheeting, her body coming to a dead halt right next to the heavy iron radiator. She had fallen directly into the striking range of the chain. The chained creature lunged with terrifying speed. The heavy iron chains pulled taut, groaning under the immense strain, but the creature had the reach. It dropped its elongated, skull-like head, sinking its jagged, broken teeth deeply into the soft tissue of her shoulder and neck. She released a horrifying, gargling scream, her hands flying up to push the rotting monster away from her throat. The creature thrashed violently, its jaws locked tightly, tearing brutally through her surgical scrubs and into the muscle beneath. I did not stay to watch the outcome of the struggle. I abandoned the chair, turned away from the bloodbath, and sprinted towards the far end of the room. The exterior window was securely locked and painted shut. I did not slow down. I raised my arms, shielding my face, and dove headfirst directly through the thick glass pane. The glass shattered around me, slicing through my jacket and my arms as I stumbled out into the overgrown weeds of the side yard. I hit the wet dirt hard, rolling frantically to absorb the impact, and immediately scrambled to my feet. I bolted across the overgrown yard, my boots slipping on the wet grass as the horrifying sounds of the struggle echoed loudly from the broken window behind me. I did not look back. I reached my car, threw myself into the driver's seat, started the engine with shaking hands, and floored the accelerator, tearing out of the dark neighborhood at reckless speeds. I drove for 30 minutes until I reached a brightly lit gas station. I locked my car doors, pulled my phone from my pocket, and dialed emergency services. I reported the address anonymously, frantically stating that I had heard screaming and breaking glass, and then I threw the phone into the nearby stormy rain. I spent the rest of the night sitting in a cheap motel room, keeping the lights burning bright, meticulously cleaning the superficial glass cuts on my arms, waiting for police sirens to pass. In the following afternoon, I sat in the motel room, watching the local news broadcasts on the small television. The breaking news report confirmed that the county police had raided the isolated house. The news anchor looked visibly shaken, reported that authorities had uncovered a massive, horrific crime scene. They found the bodies of 3 missing men, extensively mutilated inside the home. The anchor also stated that animal control had been called to the scene to neutralize a highly aggressive, diseased animal found chained inside the residence. The authorities classified the creature to the public as a severely starved, mange-ridden bear that had wandered into the home and attacked the occupants. But the final detail of the broadcast completely froze the blood in my veins. The police had scoured the entire property, sweeping the house and the surrounding wooded lots. They found the victims, they found the creature, but they found absolutely no trace of the female homeowner. She was officially listed as missing, presumed to have fled the scene before the authorities arrived. I turned off the television, sitting in silence, the terrifying realization slowly assembling itself in my mind. I remember watching the feral creature drop its head and sink its jagged teeth into her neck. I watched the blood pour out over her surgical scrubs. If her insane, desperate story was actually true, if the venom in the saliva and the bite of those creatures carried the biological infection, if the bite passes the curse, she now has the infection, and because her body is whole, she possesses the full, unobstructed ability to shape shift. I am writing this post from a new apartment hundreds of miles away from that city. I've changed my phone number, deleted every social media account I owned, keep heavy deadbolts locked at all times. But the fear never leaves me. I walk down the crowded streets, looking at the faces of the people passing by me. I look at the baristas handing me coffee, the cashiers at the grocery store, the people standing next to me in the elevator. She knows what I look like, and someone this crazy will not leave revenge behind. And now she could be absolutely anyone. A poor guy, like what is he going to do now? Like how is he ever going to be at peace? Just let me know what you thought, and if you have any scary stories of your own that you'd like me to read, just shoot me over a message.
Apparently there's a reason why old Appalachian people tell you if somebody disappear in the woods at night and suddenly come back too quiet, don't let them in immediately. And welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. Okay, toxins. So this story was sent to me by a guy named Caleb from Eastern Tennessee. And honestly, this sounds exactly like the type of story that mountain people whisper about, but they never fully explain. So Caleb said when he was about 14 years old, his cousin Ryan disappeared in the woods behind their grandmother's property. And he's still missing to this day. Now, these weren't regular little woods either. I'm talking about the Appalachian forest. No lights, no cell service, nothing but mountains and trees for miles. And according to Caleb, everybody in that area had weird rules about those woods. Don't whistle after dark. Don't answer voices calling your name. And if the woods suddenly go quiet, you take your ass inside. Now, one night, Ryan decided to ignore everybody and sneak out with two friends around midnight. Supposedly, they were trying to hike up an abandoned fire tower behind the mountains. About an hour later, both of Ryan's friends came running back to the house, terrified, y'all. But Ryan, gone. And the weird part, the boys weren't even talking about monsters or ghosts or nothing dramatic like that. They just kept repeating, something was following us. And apparently, whatever they heard in those woods made every sound around them stop. No bugs, no frogs, no wind, just silence. Yeah, fuck that. Now, the family searched all night for Ryan. Nothing. No footprints, no phone, no yelling, nothing. Until right before sunrise, that's when Caleb said they saw Ryan walking down the tree line towards the house. Said he was walking slow, he had his head down, and he was covered in mud. But baby, his grandmother immediately started panicking. She grabbed Caleb and told everybody, don't let him inside yet. Now that would have had me crying instantly. But according to Caleb, something about Ryan kind of felt off. Said he wasn't injured, he wasn't hysterical, it was just wrong. Said he wasn't talking and he wouldn't look anybody in the eyes. And his clothes were soaking wet, even though it never rained that night. Then his grandmother asked him, what followed you out of them woods? And Ryan finally looked up and smiled. Y'all, Caleb said his cousin smiled before answering. Then he said, it almost got me. Fuck, almost. Now, the family thought maybe he was traumatized or just in shock until the next few weeks. Because after that night, Ryan completely changed. He stopped talking to everybody. He started wandering outside late at night barefoot.
And he would stand near the woods for hours just staring. And every single dog around him started acting terrified. They would be growling, whining, backing away. Then one night, Caleb woke up around 3 a.m. and saw Ryan standing in the backyard facing the woods, right? So he was completely still. And according to Caleb, something huge moved between those trees in front of him. Not fast, and it wasn't like animal-like. He said it was slow, like it wanted to be seen. Then Ryan quietly walked into the woods towards it. And baby, he never came back after that again. Fuck that. Now listen, do I know what happened out there? No. But do I know those old mountain elders make rules for a reason? Yes, baby. And if somebody comes back from the woods acting different, baby, I'm locking the damn door. You can stay your ass right on out there. I'm sorry. And Toxins, tell me, would you have let Ryan back inside the house? I love y'all. I'll see you in the next video.
So the last story I told had to do with an orange light that went between me and my mom when I was a teenager. This one has to do with a blue one. And there were two different houses that me and my husband lived in, and I honestly can't remember if it was the first or second one, but I'm gonna say it's the second one, but I don't know. Not important. Anyway, there was from the kitchen to the living room, this ball of blue light that just shot through, and then all of a sudden he had a CD player, like that 5-disc CD player. It turns on. And then my other story from this house was, there was one night, like we went to the lake that day with the kids and everything, and they were out in the living room, and I had to go to bed because I probably had to work, or I just went to bed. I don't know. Anyway, like I'm laying in bed and I'm hearing a bunch of talking. So I look outside the window because we lived in a trailer and it was like a trailer court, and there was a road behind there, and I'm thinking somebody's just walking by talking, and then they, wouldn't stop. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look. So I look I look up the street, down the street, nobody's outside. And then, so I lay back down, and like I'm still hearing it. And I would say this girl is probably like I would say late teens, early 20s. Like I can't tell, but her voice sounded younger, but And then all of a sudden, I hear her say, she can hear me, or she can hear us. But I think she said she can hear me. And it sounds like it's actually coming from in our room and under the bed, which I don't know why. I wasn't on a podcast recently, which I didn't share that part, where it sounded like it was literally under the bed, and I don't know, and I don't remember what my reaction was, because like I said, I've had so many things happen to me since I was really little that like sometimes it just doesn't faze me. So I don't know, but there's another couple stories. So yeah, bye.
Last night I shared one of the most traumatic things I've experienced as a psychic medium, but I'm going to tell you why I'd probably do the same thing that spirit did if I was in their situation. So back in 2023, I was falling asleep at night and I was starting a new job the next day. It was my first job since living in Canada, so I was really, really nervous. And I had a spirit come through, and I did what I always do, unless I'm feeling chatty, but I asked them to leave me alone and go to someone else who was open, because it was my sleep time. And they proceeded to show me a visual in my mind's eye of what looked like me lying in a casket. And I sort of lay there and I was just like, what the fuck kind of blackmail is this? And I kept saying, no, please go to someone else who's open. This is my sleep time. I was standing my ground. I didn't want to show them I was scared. And then the visual started to change, and I started to see a young girl sitting in her bedroom right on the floor, and she was bawling her eyes out. Like she was sobbing, and it was heart-wrenching. And as I was watching this happen, I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is real. This isn't a spirit showing me a version of events. I'm seeing someone in their most vulnerable state right now. This is real. It became clear really quickly that this girl was contemplating attempting unaliving herself. And as soon as I understood that, I started being shown her name. I was shown a TV character from a show that I adored, and I was shown their first name and their last name, and I understood that to be either the girl's name or the mum's name. And everything sort of continued to play in like a movie form. I could see that the spirit that was coming through to me initially, the mum, had passed away really suddenly at a very young age and very recently, and the daughter was really struggling with that. The girl was in New Zealand. It was a New Zealand family, and the mum had come through to me to see if I could take away some of her daughter's pain so that she might stop contemplating what she was about to do. So I did. I lay there, and when I do healing, I work with colour a lot, and so I sort of visualised that the pain going through this girl was a certain colour, and I sort of took it out and almost brought it in me and sort of transmuted it from there. I was very sure to not carry that pain on my own, but I understood that I kind of had to be like a conduit to it. Don't know if I just used conduit right. But over time, I could see this girl in her room, and I could see her sort of stop crying, and I don't know where she is now. I was too scared to check the newspaper and things like that. But it just made me really understand why the mum did what she did. At the end of the day, spirits coming through to us are desperate. They're trying to get either a message through to their loved ones, or they're trying to do something with our help. And what she was trying to get me to do was a lot more important than me getting a good sleep for my first day of work the next day. I mean, it was still very intense. And I guess it's one way to get someone's attention is just show them a visual of them lying in a coffin. I hope her daughter's okay now.
Let's talk about more scary times that people disappeared while on a road trip. Because last year, over 130 million people took road trips, and just over 15,000 of them were never seen again. This is the case of Karen Denise Wells. She's a 23-year-old single mother from Oklahoma. On April 12th of 1994, she decided to take a road trip. Early the next morning, her rental car was found at the side of the road. Now, previously, the night before, she did check into a motel and she called her friend. The hotel was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She had called her friend Melissa Shepard, who then agreed to meet her at the hotel. Melissa arrived at the hotel, her friend was not there, and all of her belongings were just left. When they found the rental car, the vehicle was out of gas and the doors were left wide open. Karen's wallet and purse were found in a nearby ditch. Karen was nowhere to be found. Now, what was weird about the car was the odometer. It did not match the distance that Karen drove that day. There were over 700 extra miles on it. Right before she arrived in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, she apparently was in 2 other towns that day that she drove further out of her way to get to. It is so weird and bizarre. To this day, we have no idea what happened to Karen. If you want to watch a movie about road trip horror stories, then check out Passenger, only in theaters May 22nd.
So listen to me.
Let's read one of your scary stories. When I was around 7 years old, my parents would take me and my brother to visit my grandmother's house quite often. My mom always wanted us to stay close with our extended family, no matter how far apart we lived, so we would drive over almost every weekend. Living in my grandma's house were both of my maternal grandparents, my aunt, her husband, and my cousin. At the time, I didn't know much about my cousin's beliefs, but looking back, I know she was always skeptical of the Christian upbringing our family had. Even as a kid, she was fascinated by paranormal topics and would experiment with things like Ouija boards because she found them interesting. I'm not a religious person myself, so I don't judge her for that, but I genuinely believe she may have brought something into that house, even if she never intended to. There was always something that felt wrong about that place. One weekend, we stayed late enough to spend the night, which was pretty normal for us. After it got dark, my cousin, my brother, and I started playing tag throughout the house. We were running from room to room, chasing each other everywhere. At some point, my brother got separated from us, and my cousin ended up chasing me into the garage. The garage wasn't very large. Aside from some old packed boxes stacked around the room, the only major thing in there was my aunt's car parked in the middle. Once we got inside, we split up. I ran to the left side of the car while my cousin ran to the right. We started crouching below the windows and then popping back up to look at each other. each waiting for the other person to make the first move and run. Then something changed. I ducked below the window again, and all of a sudden I felt strange. It was as if some kind of unnatural presence had entered the room. My stomach dropped instantly, and I felt a deep sense of dread that I couldn't explain. The atmosphere in the garage suddenly felt wrong, though I had no idea why. I tried to ignore the feeling, peeking back up at my cousin's side of the car, but when I looked, I didn't see her. I saw something else. Through the window on the opposite side of the garage, I saw a completely black, shadow-like figure silently gliding past the car. It had the shape of a person, but there were no visible features or defining details. As it moved, I noticed something even stranger. The outline of its head and back seemed to ripple and roll, almost as if it were on fire. Dark wisps trailed behind it as it passed by. The figure never spoke. It never turned toward me. It simply glided across the garage while I stared at it in complete confusion. Instinctively, I dropped back below the window. Before I could look up again, my cousin suddenly sprang from her hiding spot and ran out of the garage. Without looking back, I immediately chased after her. At the time, I wasn't particularly frightened. I was more confused than anything else, but looking back on that experience now, it genuinely terrifies me. To this day, I have no idea what that figure was or whether my cousin saw it too. What makes the memory even more unsettling is that every time I visited my grandmother's house since then, I felt the same sensation, that same feeling that something is wrong there. I can't explain it, but the house has never felt completely normal to me. Sometimes I wonder if whatever I saw that night is still there somewhere, and sometimes I wonder if I was the only person who ever saw it at all.
Hi, my little scary cats. I got a scary story time for y'all tonight, and this one's creepy. This is about the time that my boy cousin was dating a ghost. Okay, so back in the day, we were living at the haunted apartments. Okay, and it was me and my little cousins. We're all still living together. My boy cousin goes to school. Okay, he goes to school one day, and he's walking around, I guess changing classes or whatever, and he happens to look down, and he sees this picture of a girl. Picks it up, and he's looking at this picture, and he's like, this is the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. And he's like, I just felt drawn to this picture. I wanted to talk to her so bad. So he comes home and he tells us all about it. And he's like, please help me find this girl. He's like, I feel like I just need to talk to her. He goes, I really want to talk to her. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we're on a mission, okay, to find out who this girl is. So we start asking everybody. We ask all of our friends. We ask a lot of people around. We show them her picture, okay? Nobody knows who she is. They don't know nothing about her. And we're like, that is strange. So he goes and he's like, asks everybody at school, everybody he knows. Nobody knows anything about her at all. So he's like starting to like give up. So one day he's coming home from school and he walks to his car and he says he hears somebody say, excuse me, excuse me. So he turns around and it's the girl. The girl is like standing behind him and she's like, hi. And before she says anything, he's like, oh my God. He goes, it's you. He goes, I found your picture. And he goes, and I've been looking for you everywhere. I've had everybody try to find you. And he goes, and nobody really knows anything about you. She's like, yeah, well, I'm a very private person. I'm very shy. I don't really talk to a lot of people. And he was like, okay, well, that explains why nobody knows who you are. And he's like, but I wanted to know you so bad. I wanted to talk to you. So they start talking. Okay, they start talking and they're like spending a lot of time together. And so I tell him, I'm like, listen, hey, we want to get to know her. So why don't you bring her over for dinner or, we can go out and we can hang out together or something. Every time we did something, we invited her, but she could never show up. She never came. So we're like, maybe she just doesn't like us, And she would call the apartment. And when she would call the apartment, let's say she called the apartment, answer the phone, hello. And then she'd be like, just on the phone, like you just hear static, and then it would hang up. So then call right back, hello, static, and then it would hang up. Then call back a third time, my boy cousin would answer the phone and she'd be on the phone. So I know it was her. I know it was her calling. Okay, she just wanted him to answer the phone. So I'm thinking she hates us. I don't know why she doesn't like us. She doesn't want to know us. She doesn't want to be around us. And it was so odd that every time we would see him, right, we would walk up on him and be like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And he'd be like, oh, I'm waiting for my girlfriend. She was just here with me, but she went to the restroom. Or she went into the office at school to do something. It was always something like before we'd walk up, she had just taken off. So we thought that was strange too. So one day, you know, I tell him, I'm like, listen, your girlfriend doesn't like us. She doesn't want to hang out with us. She doesn't want to get to know us, anything. And he's like, no, it's not that. You know, she's just real shy. He goes, I'll talk to her about it tonight. We're going out on a date. And, you know, I'll talk to her and see what's up. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, have you met her family or anything? He's like, no, you know, we've been dating for a couple of months, but, you know, I haven't really had a chance to meet her family or nothing. And I'm like, okay. So he leaves to go on his date. We follow him, okay? I know, but we followed him. We followed him to her house. We see him get off the car. He runs up to the porch, and we see him talking to somebody. And he's like making all these hand movements and stuff. So I'm like, okay, he's having a deep conversation with somebody. And we're all just like looking, you know, but we don't see anybody. So then we see him come down from the porch, walk to the car, open the passenger side door, and we don't see anybody get in, and he closes the door. Runs around to the driver's side, gets in, and takes off. So we're like, that's weird, because like, who got in the car? So we follow him to the restaurant. He goes to the restaurant, same thing, pulls in, gets off the car, goes to the passenger side, opens the door, and then closes it, walks up to the restaurant door, opens it, waits a few minutes, and then walks in. So we walk in the restaurant, and we see him sitting at the booth. So we walk up to the booth, and we're like, hey, what's up? What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, me and my girlfriend just came here, you know, to grab something to eat. What are y'all doing here? And I'm like, oh, we just came to get something to eat too. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, where's your girlfriend? And he goes, oh, she just went to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we go to the bathroom, okay? Mind you, we know what she looks like because he shows us the picture. So we go into the bathroom, but nobody's in the bathroom. And I'm like, that's weird. But it was really cold inside the bathroom. So I'm like, this is strange. So we go back out to the booth, and I'm like, hey, there's nobody in the bathroom. And he goes, yeah, she just went in there. She told me she'd be right back. And I'm like, okay. So we sit in the booth, and we're waiting. We wait about an hour and a half. She never shows up. She never comes back. And he's like, what did y'all do? Did y'all scare her off? And I'm like, no, there was nobody even in the bathroom. We never even got to see her. And he's like, that's strange. So he's like, I'm going to go back to her house. So he gets in his car, and he goes back to her house. We follow him. We see him go up to the door, knock on the door, and he's talking to this lady. We see him get back off come down off the porch, go back into his car, and he takes off. So we follow him again. This time he goes to our apartment. So he's at the apartment, and we get off the car, and we're like, hey, what's up? What happened? Where's your girlfriend? And he was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, no, what's going on? And he's like, listen, he goes, I went over there, I knocked on the door, and I asked for her. I asked the lady, hey, is Alicia here? And he goes, the look on her face, he goes, she just turned pale white. And she looked at me, she goes, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, I'm looking for Alicia. I came, picked her up, and we went out on a date. And then I don't know what happened. We're at the restaurant, and she just left. And she goes, no, that's not possible. That couldn't be. And he goes, yes. He goes, you know, I don't know what happened. I just want to know if she was okay. And she goes, listen to me. She goes, Alicia went missing many, many years ago. She never came back. She went to school one day and just went missing from school. And he was like, what? And he was like, she said, yes. She goes, so what you're talking about is not even true. So it freaked him out. So he said he started thinking on the drive home that he noticed every time that somebody would walk up to them, she always, right before they would walk up to them, she had to leave. She would either say she had to go to the bathroom, or she was going home, or she had to go do something, or she forgot something somewhere. And he goes, so nobody ever really seen them together. Just like when we would walk up to him, we never seen him with her. So he started thinking, and he was like, maybe she was never there. I don't think she was ever there. We would never see her. She would never talk to us, only him. So I don't know, my little scary cats. My cousin was dating a ghost, and they never found out what happened to her. So let me know what y'all think in the comments section. This is my scary story time for tonight. Until next time, my little scary cats. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Share the video. Follow for more scary stories. Okay, my little scary cats. Until next time, stay toxic.